Well, good morning, Jigender Rana here. So, the topic for our discussion today is insurance for nuclear power plants. Insurance for nuclear power plants. India has started working on a specific insurance product for nuclear power plants. As it looks to sharply expand commercial production of nuclear energy to 100 GW by 2047 from 8 GW currently. So such a product is critical to the government's decision to open the nuclear energy sector to private investment while covering nuclear incident risks. A dedicated team of experts under the guidance of stakeholder ministries have initiated talks with insurance companies and sector regulator, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board for designing the product. Designing the product. So design of the insurance cover would be a key element for the development of the sector. The details are being worked out. The discussions are at a preliminary stage, though nothing that the new product is likely to prescribe a higher amount of perpetrator's liability. It's also expected insurers could be allowed greater inspection, access to nuclear power plants. So the discussions are running parallel to those on changes to the Atomic Energy Act and Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act. The robust insurance and risk management framework would be a key pillar to the proposed changes to the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act. The two acts would be amended to allow entry of private sector into nuclear energy. The center had in 2015 set up the India Nuclear Reinsurance Pool with General Insurance Corporation of India, that is GICD, and several other local insurers with a capacity of rupees 1,500 crore to provide insurance to cover the liability under Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage. Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act 2010. So both for operators as well as suppliers. There is a need to relook the existing insurance pool as it had failed to take off because of truncated coverage. There were issues with accessibility to nuclear plants also, which needs to be addressed to form up a comprehensive insurance cover for the sector. Now, India has barely half the insurance amount it needs in the event of a nuclear disaster, raising concerns among the experts about the lack of oversight on the nuclear sector. The India Nuclear Insurance Pool has collected around 7 billion to 8 billion rupees of the 15 billion rupees required under the Civil Liabilities for Nuclear Damage Act 2010. So indicating a critical shortfall in funds that will be needed to compensate victims and pay for cleanup in case of a nuclear disaster. The funds disclosure was made at the nuclear insurance session of the India Nuclear Business Platform in December, where the speakers included representatives of the Nuclear Power Corporation India Limited, which operates the country's nuclear reactors, and leading insurance companies including New India Assurance and GICD. So the INIP means India Nuclear Insurance Pool was set up in 2015 under the CL&D legislation CL&D means Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act 2010. So CL&D legislation. Under that law, operators and suppliers of nuclear power plants are liable in case of an accident and both must obtain insurance through the INIP. So at the time, India's Department of Atomic Energy and its frequently asked questions on this CL&D Act stated that GICD and four other public sector insurers would collectively contribute half of the total required amount of 15 billion rupees, that is rupees 182.9 million. So with the governments filling in the balance for the first few years till the insurance companies are able to maintain it on their own. So the fact that the nuclear insurance pool has not even met what is required by law is concerning. So it shows that the Parliament is not overseeing how the nuclear sector is operating. So the greater concern is the approach of NPCIL and the other parties involved, but seem to think of liability requirements as a box to check off rather than something they need to prudently plan for. So they seems to be victim of the same safety myth that was at the root of the inadequate preparations for nuclear accidents revealed in the aftermath of multiple reactors accidents at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan in March 2011. So India currently has 22 reactors, all of which are operated by the NPCIL. The INIP provides insurance to all of them. So apart from this, it has 10 reactors that are at various stages of construction, one of which has been connected to the grid, and then New Delhi has sanctioned another 10, all of which are expected to start functioning by 2031. But how these plants will be insured is unknown. So nuclear pools were first set up in 1950s in the United States by insurance companies to deal with potential accidents at civilian nuclear reactors. A number of insurers came together to jointly underwrite civil nuclear risk. Since a nuclear accident has catastrophic potential with enormous costs beyond the capacity of individual risk insurers to take on. The INIP, which is made up of India's national reinsurance company GIC Re, an association with 11 domestic non-life insurance companies, has managed GIC Re. So of the amount raised, public sector insurance companies have so far contributed 86%. So with private insurance companies bringing in the rest. Now GIC Re's contribution is the largest with 6 billion rupees, that is $73 million. The other public sector insurance companies in the pool are New India Insurance, United India Insurance, Oriental Insurance and National Insurance Company Limited. So the private sector companies include ICICI Lombard General Insurance, Reliance General Insurance, Tata AIG General Insurance, Ipca Tokyo General Insurance, Cholamandalam General Insurance, SBI General Insurance and Universal Sompo General Insurance. The problem of Indian insurance companies' inability to pay for nuclear liability insurance has been brewing since at least 2014, when they signaled their inability to raise more than 7.5 billion rupees, that is $91.4 million, or half the amount required. So under international norms, so whenever an insurance company creates an insurance pool in a new area of business, it cannot set apart more than 3% of its net worth and ask the government to make up for the shortfall. So since 2014, however, experts points to a lack of reinsurance for nuclear risk liability as one of the likely reasons for companies failing to pay their full share. The insurance companies might have paid their share if the reinsurance market had supported them. Just as individuals seek insurance for the risk, so the insurance companies too require to cover their risk. There is also concern about whether the insurance cover of 15 billion rupees, that is rupees 182.9 million, is enough to insure all of NPCIL's 22 reactors annually. If there is a nuclear incident where the annual limit of 15 billion rupees of the policy issued under INIP is partially or completely utilized, the other nuclear installations would be without full or any cover for that year. So the Indian Nuclear Insurance Pool or Nuclear Pool's genesis can be traced to a 2008 agreement between India and the US for civilian nuclear cooperation. So under the agreement, India was allowed to start importing nuclear technology and materials and enabled the entry of private firms into the Indian civilian nuclear market. But India lacked a regime that assigned legal liability in the event of a nuclear accident. So the CLND Act 2010 was brought in to resolve that amidst much debate and wrangling in the Indian Parliament. But the question of whether suppliers should be held liable emerged as a serious point of contention. So with critics in India accusing the government of providing a shield to US firms in an effort to get them on board as suppliers at the expense of Indian citizens. While the industry refers to nuclear incidents as the rarest of the rare, the last major nuclear disasters were 1986, when there was a leak at a plant in Chernobyl in Ukraine when it was still a part of the Soviet Union, and in 2011 when a major earthquake and a tsunami caused a nuclear accident in Fukushima in Japan. The explosion and fire at the Chernobyl nuclear reactor released radioactive material into the atmosphere, affecting thousands and having ramifications across Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and several European countries. The economic cost of the accident ranged anywhere between $235 billion and $700 billion, including compensation worth hundreds of billions of dollars, not to mention far-reaching costs to the environment and health. But the cost of Japan's Fukushima disaster have been estimated at more than $200 billion, of which compensation cost included $72 billion. So the Fukushima disaster displaced thousands with cleanup activities continuing for a decade. So closer to home, India's variant of an industrial disaster, the 1984 Bhopal gas leak killed more than 15,000 and caused serious health problems in about 500,000 people when a pesticide plant leaked toxic methyl cyanide gas into the atmosphere. So subjecting generations of people to adverse health effects such as cancer, congenital malfunctions, and lung and heart diseases. The Union Carbide Corporation, a US company that built the damage causing Bhopal plant, paid a penalty of $470 billion in compensation to victims and their families. Then the US Union Carbide was altogether cleared of any direct liability towards victims. So as far as the nuclear industry is concerned, liability is usually channeled towards operators of power plants while suppliers remain shielded. So this practice begins in the 1950s in the US, where in order to encourage private sector participation, participation. So India's liability was to fall in line with the global trend, barring Section 17 billion of the CLND Act 2010, which allows the operators of the right of recourse in case the accident is found to be the consequence of an act of supplier, which includes the supply of defective or substandard equipment of materials. Thank you very much.